The eagle's shadow crossed her face as she clutched the court papers, her mouth falling open. Behind her, 24 birds of prey circled the Victorian mansion she'd sworn to destroy. Marcus stood at his fence line, arms crossed, watching karma arrive on wings of thunder. What she'd started with petty complaints had awakened something ancient, and it was coming for her empire. The first letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in May, slipped into Marcus Chen's mailbox like a knife between ribs. He found it while watering the bird feeders he'd installed throughout his 3-acre property, the hummingbird stations near the porch, the finch feeders by the oak grove, the suet holders that attracted woodpeckers and nuthatches. His late wife Sarah had started the tradition 15 years ago, before the cancer took her. Now, 3 years after her death, the birds were all Marcus had left of their shared dream. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive. The return address made his stomach drop. Vivienne Ashford, 1847 Cliffside Manor. His neighbor. Marcus tore it open standing there in his garden, chickadees fluttering around his head. The letter was typed on letterhead featuring an embossed gold crest. Dear Mr. Chen, it has come to my attention that your property has become a nuisance to the surrounding neighborhood. The excessive bird population you have cultivated poses health risks, creates unsanitary conditions, and generates unacceptable noise levels. I am hereby requesting that you remove all bird feeders and cease attracting wildlife to your property within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in formal complaints to the County Health Department and Homeowners Association. Regards, Vivienne Ashford, President, Cliffside Estates HOA. Marcus read it twice, his hands trembling. He looked up at Cliffside Manor, the Victorian monstrosity that loomed on the hill above his modest ranch house. Vivienne had bought it 2 years ago, gutted it, and rebuilt it into something that belonged in a magazine spread, all sharp angles and floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the sun like mirrors. She'd also immediately begun complaining about his fence, about his unkempt wildflower garden, about his old pickup truck. But she'd never come to his door, never introduced herself, just letters, always letters. 30 days, Marcus muttered, crumpling the paper. A cardinal landed on his shoulder. Chester, Sarah had named him, and chirped sympathetically. He wouldn't do it, couldn't do it. These birds were his connection to Sarah, to the life they'd built. The feeders stayed. 2 weeks later, Marcus was replacing a suet cake when a black Mercedes SUV pulled into his driveway. The door opened, and Vivienne Ashford emerged like a storm front. She was tall, mid-40s, with platinum hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. Her white pantsuit was spotless despite the May humidity. Diamond studs caught the light as she approached, her heels clicking on his gravel drive. Mr. Chen, her voice was clipped northeastern, I don't believe you received my letter. Marcus set down the suet holder. I received it. Then you're choosing to ignore it. She looked around his property with barely concealed disgust. A blue jay screeched from the oak tree. This is unacceptable. Do you know what bird droppings do to property values, to paint, to human health? The birds were here before you, Marcus said evenly. This land has been in my family for 30 years. Your mansion is 2 years old. My home, Vivienne corrected sharply, is a $3 million investment. Your hobby is destroying it. I've had to have my windows cleaned twice this month. My Tesla has been defecated on 4 times. And the noise. Do you have any idea what it's like to hear screeching at 5 in the morning? That's called nature. Her eyes went cold. That's called a public nuisance, and I will not tolerate it. She pulled out her phone, showing him a photo. This is my deck, covered in bird waste. This is my fountain, filled with feathers and excrement. This is my outdoor furniture, ruined. Marcus studied the photos. Her deck was a sprawling marble terrace the size of his entire house. Her fountain was a modern art installation that probably cost more than his truck. The furniture looked like it belonged in a 5-star resort. Maybe the birds don't like modern design, Marcus said. Vivienne's jaw clenched. You think this is funny? I have connections, Mr. Chen. My ex-husband sits on the county planning commission. My attorney is on retainer. I will bury you in legal fees if you don't remove those feeders. Then I guess you should call your attorney. For a moment, pure rage flashed across her face. Then she smiled, a cold, calculated expression that made Marcus's skin crawl. I already have, she turned on her heel. You have 2 weeks, Mr. Chen. After that, things get ugly. The health department inspector arrived on Monday. Marcus was ready. He'd spent the weekend researching property rights, wildlife regulations, and HOA bylaws. He'd also discovered something interesting. Vivienne had lied. There was no HOA. Cliffside Estates was an unincorporated area with minimal zoning restrictions. She'd invented the title to intimidate him. The inspector, a tired-looking man named Rodriguez, walked the property with a clipboard, examining the feeders, checking for waste accumulation, testing the birdbath water. "Everything's clean," Rodriguez said finally. "You're maintaining it well, no health code violations." "So the complaint is baseless." Rodriguez sighed. "Look, between you and me, Ms. Ashford has filed complaints against 3 different neighbors in the past year. The family with the vegetable garden, the couple with the playground set. She even tried to get the Jensen's therapy dog removed. She's persistent." "What happened to them?" "The gardeners moved. The couple boxed up the playground. The Jensens got a lawyer and she backed off." Rodriguez closed his clipboard. "You're not doing anything wrong, Mr. Chen, but that woman has resources. She makes people's lives hell until they give up." After Rodriguez left, Marcus sat on his porch and watched the evening birds arrive. Goldfinches, purple finches, evening grosbeaks, a pair of mourning doves that nested in his eaves every spring. He thought about Sarah, about the morning she'd hung the first feeder while still in her bathrobe, laughing as chickadees landed on her outstretched hand. About the journal she'd kept, documenting every species that visited. About her last words, keep feeding them, keep the magic alive. His phone rang, unknown number. "Mr. Chen," a woman's voice, professional. "This is Catherine Ward from the Ashford Legal Group. I'm calling on behalf of Ms. Vivienne Ashford regarding the ongoing nuisance complaint." Marcus hung up. The phone rang again immediately. He let it go to voicemail. It rang 6 more times that evening. On Wednesday, Marcus found his mailbox full of legal documents. Notice of intent to sue. Cease and desist. Property value assessment claim. The lawsuit demanded $75,000 in damages for property devaluation, cleaning costs, and emotional distress. It also sought a permanent injunction against harboring, feeding, or otherwise encouraging wildlife congregation. Marcus's hands shook as he read. $75,000. He didn't have $75,000. His savings had been depleted by Sarah's medical bills. His pension covered his basic needs, nothing more. He called the one lawyer he knew, Tom Brennan, an old friend from his teaching days who'd moved into estate law. Tom's voice was grim after Marcus explained. "She's filing in civil court. Even if you win, the legal fees will destroy you. And Marcus, she's got the Ashford Legal Group. They're sharks. They'll drag this out for years." "What should I do?" Long pause. "Take down the feeders. It's not worth it." That night, Marcus sat in Sarah's study, surrounded by her bird journals. 15 years of observations, sketches, notes. The indigo bunting that visited only twice. The rare white sparrow. The family of hawks that nested in the tall pine every year. He opened the last journal, dated 2 months before her death. June 15. "Marcus is worried about me. I see it in his eyes. But this morning a scarlet tanager landed on the bedroom window while we were having coffee. So red it looked like it was on fire. Marcus cried. I did too. This is why we feed them. This is why it matters. Life finding life. Beauty finding beauty. Never stop, my love. Never stop feeding them." Marcus closed the journal. "I won't," he whispered. The harassment escalated. Vivienne filed noise complaints with the sheriff's office. They came out 3 times in 1 week, found nothing actionable, and told Marcus they couldn't do anything about birds singing at dawn. She hired a private investigator who photographed Marcus's property from the road, documenting every feeder, every bird, every perceived violation. She sent letters to Marcus's adult children, his daughter in Seattle, his son in Boston, claiming their father was running an animal hoarding operation and suggesting they intervene. His daughter Jenny called worried. "Dad, is everything okay? We got this really weird letter." "I'm fine, honey. Just a neighbor who doesn't like birds." "Should we come home?" "No, I've got this." But he didn't have it. The legal bills were mounting. Tom was working pro bono, but there were filing fees, court costs, expert witnesses. Marcus had already spent $12,000 he didn't have. And then Vivienne played her trump card. She bought the property adjacent to Marcus's land, a 2-acre lot that had been for sale for years. Then she filed for a permit to build a privacy fence, a 12-foot concrete wall that would block all sunlight from Marcus's southern feeders. "It's legal," Tom said when Marcus called him, panicking. "Property rights allow up to 15 feet in unincorporated areas, and she's positioned it perfectly. It won't violate any easements or property lines. It'll destroy the habitat. The birds need the sun, the flowers need the light." "I know, but there's nothing we can do legally." Construction began the following Monday. Marcus stood at his fence line, watching the bulldozers tear up the wild meadow that had bordered his property. The meadow where Sarah had proposed to him 40 years ago, down on one knee in a field of Indian paintbrush. The meadow where they'd scattered her ashes. Vivienne supervised from her Mercedes, never getting out, just watching through tinted glass as the machines devoured the earth. Marcus's vision blurred. He gripped the fence post until his knuckles went white. "You can't do this," he called out. The window rolled down. Vivienne's smile was razor-sharp. "Watch me." That night, Marcus sat on his porch in the dark, listening to the night birds. An owl hooted from the oak grove. Nighthawks swept overhead, their wings whistling. He was defeated, he knew it. Vivienne had won through attrition, through money, through pure relentless cruelty. The wall would go up in 2 weeks, the birds would leave, the feeders would become useless. Sarah's dream would die. He was about to go inside when he heard it, a sound like wind through metal pipes, distant but growing closer. He looked up. The moon was nearly full, casting silver light across the valley. And moving across that moon, silhouetted against the luminous disk, was a shape Marcus had never seen in all his years of birdwatching. Wings, enormous wings. A bald eagle. It circled once, twice, 3 times above his property, its cry echoing down the valley. Then it landed in the tall pine at the edge of his yard, the same tree where Sarah had scattered seeds that first morning. Marcus stood slowly, his heart hammering. The eagle looked directly at him, its white head brilliant in the moonlight. It let out another cry, sharp and clear. And from the darkness, answering cries came back. More shapes appeared against the moon, 2 eagles, 4, 6. By the time Marcus could breathe again, 12 bald eagles were perched in his trees, all watching the construction site next door with eyes that looked, somehow, intelligent. Purposeful. Ancient. Marcus remembered something Sarah had told him once, reading from a book about indigenous traditions. Eagles are messengers. When they appear, change is coming. When they gather, justice is at hand. He'd laughed it off as superstition. He wasn't laughing now. The lead eagle screamed again, and as if in response, lights began flickering on across the valley. Porch lights. House lights. Marcus saw his neighbors stepping outside, looking up at the sky at the gathering raptors. And on the hill above, in Cliffside Manor, a single light went on. Vivienne's bedroom. She'd seen them too. The eagle fixed its gaze on the mansion, and Marcus could have sworn, he saw something like satisfaction in its golden eyes. "Okay, Sarah," Marcus whispered to the darkness. "I'm listening." The eagles settled into the trees, silent sentinels against the night sky. And Marcus Chen smiled for the first time in weeks. Marcus woke to his phone exploding with notifications. Text messages, voicemails, emails. He stumbled out of bed, confused, and looked out his window. The eagles were still there. But now there were more. At least 20 perched throughout his property, in the oaks, the pines, along his fence line. The tall pine where they'd first gathered was so full of them it looked like the tree was wearing white ornaments. And they weren't alone. Red-tailed hawks had joined them. Cooper's hawks. A massive golden eagle perched on his barn roof like a gargoyle. Even a pair of ospreys circled overhead, their distinctive calls cutting through the dawn air. Marcus grabbed his phone. The first message was from Jenny. "Dad, are you seeing what I'm seeing? It's on the news." He turned on his TV. Channel 7 News had a helicopter overhead. "Unprecedented gathering of raptors in Cliffside County," the reporter was saying, her voice crackling with excitement. "Wildlife experts are baffled by what appears to be the largest congregation of eagles and hawks ever recorded in this region. The birds began arriving last night and have shown no signs of leaving. We're here with Dr. Patricia Cole from the university's Department of Ornithology. The camera cut to a woman in her 60s, glasses perched on her nose, barely containing her enthusiasm. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Cole said. "Bald eagles are typically solitary or mate in pairs. To see this many in one location with multiple species of raptors suggests something is drawing them here. But we don't know what. There's no unusual food source, no environmental anomaly. They've simply chosen this place." The camera panned across Marcus's property. He saw himself in the background, standing on his porch in his bathrobe, looking bewildered. Then the camera shifted to show Cliffside Manor. And Marcus's breath caught. The pristine white exterior was covered, absolutely covered, in bird droppings. The massive windows looked like they'd been painted with abstract white and gray patterns. The marble terrace was a disaster zone. The modern art fountain was so thoroughly desecrated it looked like it had been vandalized. And perched on Vivienne's roof, staring down at her bedroom window with unblinking intensity, was the largest bald eagle Marcus had ever seen. It had to be 4 feet tall, with a wingspan that would stretch across his living room. The alpha. The camera zoomed in on Vivienne herself, visible through a window, phone pressed to her ear, gesticulating wildly. Marcus started laughing. He couldn't help it. The laughter bubbled up from somewhere deep, relief and joy and vindication all mixed together. His phone rang. Tom Brennan. "Marcus, are you watching this?" "I'm watching. Do you have any idea why?" "No idea, but Tom, I'm not questioning it." A pause, then Tom started laughing too. "You magnificent bastard, you somehow summoned an army." By noon, Cliffside Drive was a circus. News vans lined the road. Satellite trucks blocked traffic. Reporters swarmed Marcus's property line, cameras trained on the eagles. Animal control showed up, took one look at the situation, and basically shrugged. "They're not doing anything illegal," the officer said. "They're protected under federal law. We can't remove them unless they're injured or posing an immediate threat." "Can you at least make them leave?" someone asked. "How? Ask them nicely." Dr. Cole arrived with a team of graduate students, setting up observation equipment. She knocked on Marcus's door around 2. "Mr. Chen, I'm Patricia Cole. Would you mind if we set up some monitoring stations? This is a once-in-a-lifetime research opportunity." Marcus liked her immediately. She had Sarah's same gentle enthusiasm, that spark of wonder Sarah had carried until the end. "Only if you tell me what's happening," Marcus said. They sat on his porch, watching the eagles. Dr. Cole set up a laptop, pulling up thermal imagery and migration patterns. "Honestly, I have no scientific explanation. These birds came from all over. We're tracking bands and GPS tags on several of them. That one there," she pointed to a juvenile golden eagle. "He should be in Montana right now. That female bald eagle, she nested in Alaska this summer. They've converged here from hundreds of miles away." "Why?" "That's the question." She looked at him curiously. "Is there anything unusual about your property? Any historical significance, environmental factors?" Marcus thought about Sarah, about her ashes in the meadow, about 15 years of love poured into this land. "My wife," he said quietly. "She loved birds. This was her dream." Dr. Cole's expression softened. "When did she pass?" 3 years ago." The scientist in Dr. Cole warred visibly with something else, something more human. Finally, she said, "I've been studying birds for 35 years. I've seen things I can't explain, behaviors that shouldn't exist, intelligence that defies our understanding." She gestured at the eagles. "Maybe they know something we don't." Marcus looked at the alpha, still perched on Vivienne's roof. "Maybe they do." Vivienne's counterattack began at 4 p.m. A fleet of vehicles arrived at Cliffside Manor. Pest control, professional cleaners, a crew with air horns and noise makers. They spread across her property, attempting to scare away the birds. The eagles didn't move. Not 1 inch. When a worker got too close with an air horn, the alpha spread its wings, a 7-foot span that blotted out the sun, and screamed. The sound was primal, furious, ancient. The worker dropped the air horn and ran. "They're protected," Dr. Cole shouted from Marcus's porch. "Federal law prohibits harassment." But Vivienne's people kept trying. They deployed sonic devices, strobe lights, even tried spraying the eagles with water. The Alpha had enough. It launched from the roof with 3 powerful strokes, talons extended. It didn't attack, just made a low pass over the workers, close enough that they felt the wind from its wings, close enough to understand what those talons could do. The workers fled to their trucks. Vivienne emerged from her house, face purple with rage. She stormed across her terrace, slipping twice on bird droppings, and screamed at the retreating vehicles. "Get back here, I'm paying you to." The Alpha circled back, landing on her fountain with enough force to crack the marble base. It fixed Vivienne with a stare that made Marcus's blood run cold even from 100 yards away. Vivienne took 3 steps backward, then turned and ran inside. The news cameras caught everything. That evening, Marcus's property became a pilgrimage site. His old teaching colleagues came by, bringing food and expressing solidarity. Former students he hadn't seen in years showed up just to witness the Eagles. Neighbors he barely knew knocked on his door to ask what was happening. And underlying every conversation was the same question: how did you do it? Marcus didn't have an answer, but he noticed something interesting. Every person who visited, who expressed genuine wonder at the birds, was allowed to stay. The Eagles remained calm, watchful, but peaceful. But when Vivienne's attorney showed up at dusk, trying to serve Marcus with an emergency restraining order against willful harboring of protected species to cause property damage, the Eagles responded. 10 of them left their perches simultaneously, forming a perfect V formation that swept low over the attorney's car. The man took one look at 20 sets of talons, dropped the papers on Marcus's driveway, and peeled out. Tom called immediately. Did that actually just happen? The Eagles seemed to be screening visitors. Marcus, you realize how insane that sounds. I realize I'm not imagining it. Neither am I. I'm watching the live stream. This is viral. You're trending nationally. Eagle Justice is the #3 hashtag on Twitter. Marcus stepped inside and checked his phone. Tom wasn't exaggerating. Videos of the confrontation with Vivienne's workers had been shared millions of times. Memes were everywhere. Someone had edited the Alpha's scream over the audio of a judge's gavel. The internet had chosen its side. And it wasn't Vivienne's. By nightfall, Vivienne's mansion was under siege. Not from the Eagles, from the media. News crews trained cameras on her windows. Reporters camped on the road, doing live updates. A drone had captured aerial footage of the devastation to her property, and the images were everywhere. Her pristine white palace looked like a disaster zone. The damage was estimated at over $200,000. More than twice what she was suing Marcus for. Marcus was watching the coverage when his son David called. "Dad, this is incredible. She's destroying herself." "I didn't do anything," Marcus said honestly. "You don't have to. The Eagles are doing it for you." David paused. "Mom would love this." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. She would. "Stay strong, Dad. The whole internet is on your side." After they hung up, Marcus went outside. The Eagles had settled for the night, silent shadows against the stars. But the Alpha remained on Vivienne's roof, a white-headed sentinel visible even in darkness. Marcus walked to the fence line between his property and the construction site. The bulldozers sat idle, the workers having fled when the Eagles arrived. The half-built wall stood like a monument to Vivienne's hubris. "I don't know if you can hear me," Marcus said to the darkness, to Sarah, to whatever force had brought the Eagles here. "But thank you." The Alpha called once, a clear, pure note that echoed across the valley. And from inside Cliffside Manor, Marcus heard something he'd never heard before. Vivienne Ashford was crying. Marcus was feeding the chickadees. The Eagles didn't seem to mind the smaller birds when 3 SUVs pulled into his driveway. He tensed, expecting lawyers or more harassment, but the vehicles had government plates. A tall black man in a Fish and Wildlife Service uniform emerged from the first vehicle, followed by a team of officers. "Mr. Chen, Special Agent Marcus Wright, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service." He showed his badge. "We need to talk about the Eagles." Marcus's stomach dropped. "Am I in trouble?" Wright's expression was carefully neutral. "That depends. Are you baiting them, using food to attract them here?" "No, I've never fed raptors. They just appeared." "We know." Wright pulled out a tablet showing him thermal tracking data. "We've been monitoring their movements. Every one of these birds arrived independently from different regions following no known migration pattern. Dr. Cole's team has documented their behavior. You're not doing anything wrong, Mr. Chen. Relief flooded through Marcus. Then why are you here? Wright glanced toward Cliffside Manor. Because your neighbor has been calling our office every hour, demanding we remove the birds. She's filed complaints with the EPA, the State Wildlife Department, and 3 federal agencies. She's also threatening to sue the government for failure to protect her property. Can she do that? She can try, but here's the thing, these eagles are choosing to be here. They're not being detained or baited. They're exhibiting what we call collective roosting behavior, which is rare but not unprecedented. Wright smiled slightly. And between you and me, the law is on their side, not hers. One of Wright's officers approached, a Latina woman with sergeant stripes. Boss, you need to see this. They walked to the edge of Marcus's property, overlooking the construction site. During the night, more eagles had arrived. At least 40 now. They'd completely taken over the construction zone, perching on the bulldozers, the partially built wall, every piece of equipment. But they weren't just roosting. They were systematically destroying Vivienne's construction project. One eagle was pulling apart the netting meant to contain debris. Another had its talons hooked into the plastic sheeting, tearing it to ribbons. A pair of golden eagles were working together to topple a stack of concrete forms. It looked intentional, coordinated. Jesus, Wright breathed. I've never seen anything like this. Dr. Cole came running from her observation post. Are you watching this? They're problem-solving, that's tool use, that's advanced cognitive behavior. Marcus stared. The eagles were, very deliberately, dismantling everything. Can you stop them? Marcus asked Wright. Stop federal protected species from perching on abandoned construction equipment? Wright shook his head. Not without cause, and technically they're not harming anyone. They're destroying property worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Private property left unsecured in their natural habitat. Wright's smile widened slightly. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. At 10 a.m., Vivienne called an emergency press conference. News crews that had been camped outside her mansion gathered in her driveway. Vivienne emerged looking haggard, her hair not quite perfect, her makeup not quite covering the dark circles. She wore a navy suit and carried a folder of documents. But most notably, she wore a hard hat. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, voice strained. What is happening here is not natural. It's not coincidental. I have evidence that Mr. Chen has engaged in illegal baiting to weaponize these animals against me. She opened the folder, displaying photos. These images show his extensive feeding operation, dozens of feeders designed to attract birds. This is a deliberate act of. An eagle landed on her Mercedes 10 feet away. Then another. 3 more perched on her roof overhang. Vivienne's voice faltered. The cameras swiveled to capture the eagles. One of them defecated on her windshield. The timing was too perfect. Laughter rippled through the reporters. Vivienne's face went scarlet. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is coordinated harassment. Ms. Ashford, called out a reporter from Channel 7, isn't it true that you've filed over 20 complaints against Mr. Chen, including a $75,000 lawsuit, all because he feeds backyard birds? That's a gross simplification. And isn't it true, another reporter interjected, that you bought the adjacent property specifically to build a wall that would destroy his bird habitat? That property is mine. I can develop it as I see. Ms. Ashford, a third reporter, your social media history shows multiple posts calling Mr. Chen's property an eyesore and suggesting he should be driven out. Do you stand by those statements? Vivienne's carefully constructed facade cracked. He's a stubborn old man who refuses to join the modern world. His property is dragging down all our values. I offered him money to leave. She stopped too late. You offered him money to leave? The Channel 7 reporter leaned in. How much? That's privileged information. 200,000, a voice called from the crowd. Everyone turned. Tom Brennan stood at the edge of the driveway, holding up a document. Ms. Ashford offered Mr. Chen $200,000 to sell his property and leave. When he refused, she began a campaign of systematic harassment. That's attorney-client. It's not. You emailed it to me when you tried to bribe me into convincing my client to sell. Tom's smile was dangerous. You forgot I'm Marcus's attorney, not yours. The press conference dissolved into chaos. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Vivienne tried to retreat, but an eagle landed directly in her path. The Alpha. It spread its wings fully, blocking her way to the house. Vivienne stumbled backward, falling onto her marble steps. The hard hat tumbled off, rolling across the terrace. The eagle didn't move, just stared at her with those ancient eyes. And Vivienne Ashford, corporate executive, property mogul, self-proclaimed queen of Cliffside Drive, broke down sobbing in front of 20 cameras. The story exploded. By noon, Vivienne was trending #1 worldwide. Eagle Gate overtook Eagle Justice. News outlets were calling it the ultimate Karen versus nature story. Late-night hosts were writing segments. SNL had already announced a cold open. But more importantly, the legal landscape shifted. Tom called Marcus around 3. You're not going to believe this. Vivienne's legal team just filed to drop the lawsuit. What? Why? Because every major environmental organization in the country has offered to represent you pro bono. The Sierra Club, Audubon Society, National Wildlife Federation. She's looking at countersuits from 5 different directions if she continues. They'd bury her. Marcus sat down heavily. It's over. The lawsuit is, but Marcus, there's more. The County Planning Commission met in emergency session this morning. They're investigating Vivienne's construction permit for the wall. Turns out she may have falsified some environmental impact statements. She what? The meadow she's building on? It's protected wetland habitat. She claimed it was non-functional grassland to get the permit approved. But satellite data shows seasonal flooding. If they revoke the permit, she's looking at federal environmental violations. Marcus thought about Sarah's ashes, scattered in that meadow, protected wetland habitat. Sarah would have loved that irony. What happens to her? Best case, she loses the $200,000 she spent on the property and faces fines. Worst case, federal prosecution, massive penalties, possible jail time. Tom paused. She did this to herself, Marcus. She got greedy. That evening, Marcus had unusual visitors. A rental car pulled up, and an elderly Native American man emerged, followed by a younger woman. They approached the porch slowly, respectfully. Mr. Chen, I'm Robert Whitehawk. This is my granddaughter, Marie. We're from the Shoshone-Bannock tribe. May we speak with you? Marcus invited them in. Robert walked with a cane but carried himself with quiet dignity. Marie had a camera and notebook. We've been following your story, Robert said. The Eagles, they've chosen you for a reason. Everyone keeps saying that, but I don't understand why. Robert looked out at the Eagles, now nearly 60 strong. My people have stories about places like this. Sacred ground, where the barrier between this world and the spirit world grows thin. Your wife, she made this place sacred with her love. The Eagles recognize that. Marcus felt his throat tighten. She just wanted to help the birds. She did more than that. She created a sanctuary, a place of balance. Robert pointed to the Alpha, still maintaining its vigil on Vivienne's roof. That one is old, very old. Eagles can live 40 years in the wild, sometimes longer. That one has seen many things. It came here to restore balance. By destroying Vivienne's property. By stopping her from destroying yours. Marie spoke up, her voice gentle. We've been documenting this. The Eagles aren't attacking randomly. Every action they take directly prevents or reverses damage she's caused. They destroyed her construction equipment because it was destroying protected habitat. They fouled her property because she tried to drive you away. It's not revenge, it's correction. Marcus absorbed this. What happens now? That depends on her, Robert said. If she accepts what's happening, learns from it, the Eagles may leave. If she continues fighting, he shook his head. The Eagles will stay as long as they're needed. After they left, Marcus sat on his porch as sunset painted the sky gold and crimson. The Eagles shifted in the dying light, their white heads glowing. He thought about balance, about Sarah's journal entries describing the delicate ecosystem she'd created, about how every action rippled outward, affecting everything else. Vivienne had disrupted that balance. The Eagles were restoring it. Thank you, Marcus whispered to Sarah, to whatever spirit had sent them. Thank you for protecting this place. The Alpha called once, clear and pure. And Marcus finally understood. This wasn't about him. It wasn't about Vivienne. It was about the land, the life it sustained, the love that had been poured into it. The Eagles were just making sure that love won. On the morning of day 5, Vivienne Ashford emerged from Cliffside Manor carrying 2 suitcases. Marcus saw it from his porch, where he'd been having coffee and watching the sunrise. The Eagles saw it too. The Alpha tracked her movement from the roof, head swiveling with predatory precision. Vivienne loaded her suitcases into her Mercedes, now thoroughly destroyed by eagle droppings, the black paint barely visible under layers of white. She stood there for a moment, staring up at her mansion, at the eagles covering every